Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Tuesday, November 16th, 2021 meeting of the Parks Advisory Commission. This meeting is being held electronically to protect public health and safety due to the COVID-19 virus and to comply with orders issued by the Governor, the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, and/or the Washtenaw County Health Department. We intend to conduct this meeting similarly to an in-person meeting. However, please be patient if there are technical issues. Public comment will be via telephone only. To speak during any of the public comment opportunities, please call 877-853-5247 or another of the published numbers and enter meeting ID 949-7173-0458. This information is also available on the published agenda, in the public notices section of the city website, and on the broadcast of this meeting on CTN Channel 16, AT&T Channel 99, and online at www.a2gov.org/watchctn and select government channel. Colin, could you please call the roll?
Commissioner Morrison.
Here in Ann Arbor, Michigan.
Commissioner London.
Here in Ypsilanti, Michigan.
Commissioner Borgsdorf.
Present, Ann Arbor, Michigan.
Commissioner Ramaswamy. Not here. Commissioner Smith. Commissioner Kraut.
Present from Ypsilanti, Michigan.
Commissioner Cyclists.
Here in Ann Arbor, Michigan.
Commissioner Marson.
Here in Ann Arbor.
And Councilmember Grand.
Here in Ann Arbor.
You have a quorum.
Great, thanks, Colin. Moving on to approval of the agenda. Are there any additions or corrections to the published agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on to our first public comment period. Anyone calling in for public comment has 3 minutes to speak. And a reminder, there will be a second public comment period at the end of our meeting. Kristen, do we have any callers right now?
There are a few callers. You can press *9 to raise your hand and let us know that you want to speak during public comment. Okay, great. Caller ending in 853 can address the Park Advisory Commission.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hi, yes, we can hear you.
Hi, so this is Peter Sanderson. I'm with Washtenaw County Parks and Recreation Commission, and I learned about something on this agenda that I was interested in listening to and learning a little bit more about, particularly the Ann Arbor bike and rec proposal. And it sounds like part of that might involve some signs and things like that. And I just wanted to let this group know that the county is working on updating border-to-border trail signs throughout the county. And we've been working on that for a little bit. And we would like to collaborate where practical on this proposal, if it makes sense, in terms of how that interacts with the border-to-border trail system. So that is all I had to say, and I'm interested to learn more. So thank you.
Okay, thanks, Peter. That's noted. We appreciate you calling in.
All right, caller ending in 718 can address the Park Advisory Commission. Caller ending in 718.
Yes, that's me. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi, we can hear you. Yes, go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you. Yeah, my name is Stephen Miller. I live at 2412 Georgetown Boulevard. I am calling in because I am interested in the western boundary Sugarbush Park survey. I'm curious about how that arose. My communication with city staff indicates that it was something that was initiated by the advisory commission. And I was wondering if you could tell me something about that.
So Stephen, just so you know, this portion of our agenda is to hear public comment, but not to respond or discuss public comments. I know your particular issue with Sugarbush Park is being reviewed by staff. So is there anything else you'd like to address us regarding that issue?
Yeah, I guess if I'm not going to get any feedback, I want to express the opinion that this is a waste of natural area funds. As I've attempted to state many times, the western boundary of Sugarbush Park is very stable and well defined by the existence of the DTE sub-transmission distribution line that runs along the western boundary. I'm curious about what is going on and why this project was originated. And I guess I want to express that, again, I guess I'll repeat, if all I can do is have a one-way conversation here, is that seems to me a waste of time and effort, primarily for the reason that I've given.
Okay, your comments have been noted. Thank you for calling in.
I guess I can't ask any questions. Is that right? I mean, what do we do to communicate with the advisory commission?
So I know that staff have been in communication and they will continue to communicate with you on the process as we move forward with it. We are in receipt of your most recent questions and are reviewing those, and we'll get back with you on them.
Okay, but part of the problem has been, and I guess I can state this as a fact, is I haven't gotten consistent reply from staff. Very concerned about the origins of this project and its necessity. That said, I'm perfectly happy to, I live backed up to that park, so I'm perfectly happy to see lots of resources and project effort put into it, and including contributing if it can be done in a proper way to get the right kind of outcome.
Understood. Noted. Thank you.
Yep. Okay. Like I say, I'm always around at this number, so please give me a call.
Thank you.
Yep.
Kristen, do we have any other callers at this time?
There is one more caller who joined a little bit later in the meeting. As a reminder, you can press *9 to raise your hand and let us know that you'd like to address the Park Advisory Commission. All right, no more callers have indicated.
Okay, thank you. We will move on to the approval of the minutes.
So move, Paige.
Thanks,
I had to
Steve.
look at them. They look good, so I would move their approval.
Okay. Move to approve by Stephen, second by Lauren. Any discussion regarding the minutes? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Okay, minutes are approved. Thank you. Moving on to presentations. Our first presentation will be regarding bike recreation within Ann Arbor parks. So I'd like to welcome Garrett Potter and Mitch Bray. Hi, Garrett.
Hello.
Hello. Looks like Mitch is getting on too.
Yes.
Hey, Garrett.
Hello, everyone. Nice to meet you, Parks Advisory Commission. Hello, Colin.
Okay, great.
I will go ahead and commence screen sharing if that's all right.
Yep, go ahead when you're ready.
Okay. And see if I can do this successfully. All right. Can everyone see my screen well? Can you see the presentation well? Okay.
Looks good.
Excellent. Well, yes, my name is Garrett Potter. We are the Ann Arbor Bicycle Recreation Advocacy Group, and we're here to share a volunteer update and development proposal. Nice to meet you. We're a group of local riders from a variety of disciplines dedicated to cultivating and expanding opportunity and access for cyclists and bicycle recreation in Ann Arbor and Washtenaw County. Throughout the pandemic, bike recreation advocates and organizations from across Ann Arbor have come together to share knowledge, resources, and efforts in working toward the positive developments we will discuss in this presentation. Those advocates include Thomas Hosford, Carl Loomis, Brian Butrico, Garrett Potter, Mitch Bray, Maria Chickering, Chad Jeffrey, James Yu, and a wide community of invested volunteers. Mitch, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Mitch. Thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to be sitting here with you all. I moved here 8 years ago. I have been involved quite a bit with Potto and with the DT Energy Trail. I have been trying to get more involved. I started a business called My Bike recently, a couple years ago now, to do bicycle related activities. And that's been going well. And I'm working with Garrett and the crew at the Dirt Jump Parks, and we're working towards what we think is a great idea and what we're here to talk to you about today, which is a pump track. Garrett?
Thank you, Mitch. So here's a little, oh, sorry, I guess I can tell you a little bit about myself. I've been volunteering with Ann Arbor's parks since 2019, helping restore, maintain, and develop off-road bicycle trails and bike park features. In 2020, I began collaborating with the city, Give 365, Adopt a Park, and more and bicycle advocates groups across the county. I am an elementary school teacher, currently a graduate student at University of Michigan, and a father. Been an Ann Arbor resident since 2013. So that's a little bit about me. Here is a little snapshot of some of our community members just after a volunteer jump clinic and building day. So wide range of ages, 6 to 60 represented there. Here are a couple snapshots of some of our build days, volunteer days. I know Erica Pratt probably got to you a 2021 recap of some of the many things we've done this year. If not, we can share that with you. It's been a very exciting year. What brings us here today? Well, it's not a sudden or intrusive introduction. I would say there's a long-standing relationship of bicycle advocacy and cyclists in Ann Arbor, beginning in the 1970s and onward. I did compose a pretty thorough timeline of developments from the 70s up until today, but for sake of time, I'll just share that with you by paper or email rather than here. But to be brief, we'll say that the Potawatomi Mountain Biking Association is one of Michigan's predominant membership organizations for mountain bikers. They've grown 3 times their size in the last 6 years, from 250 members to 750 members, largely under the leadership of Carl Loomis and other community volunteers. Their work established the trail system that we have as far as mountain biking trails. Most of the trails that exist today existed in 2009, and they have been maintaining them as volunteers ever since. Tubingen Park is one of the parks that we focus on, our restoration and maintenance efforts. That has existed since about 1999-2000. The bicycle jumps that exist there and the trails there. Vandamer Park was established in 99 and 2000 as well by some of the same builders, Sean Rakos and Thomas Hosford. But the bike park came into existence in 2009. The city had bulldozed the existing dirt jumps in 2008 with a promise to immediately start working on the Vandamer Bike Park. But that, for many different reasons, was not upheld, not kept. And then the following year, after seeing how much development happened at Tübingen, the city decided they would follow through and finally start breaking ground on the Vandamer Bike Park. We have been working largely since 2019, 2020 on updates, and in 2021, in partnership with Give 365, Adopt a Park, and the city's natural area preservation, we've been bringing in 260 plus cubic yards of soil to Vandamer Bike Park to try to repair the erosion damage. We've invested hundreds and hundreds of volunteer hours, largely with shovels, helping to restore the bike park as much as we can. And we have put in several proposals. Myself and Mitch Bray both proposed developments this summer. Those developments led to an Ann Arbor-wide city survey about the bike parks and their usage. That city survey had 264 responses, which I hear is somewhat larger than other city surveys. And I'm thankful for that. I know that cyclists care. I'll share some of those responses with you today. And then we'll talk a little bit about our pump track proposal, about an equitable, reliable access and development opportunity for Ann Arbor. Here's a quote from one of our city parks survey respondents. Ann Arbor has a real opportunity to become the center of Southeast Michigan mountain biking and natural service trails. There's over 200 miles of trails within 40 minutes of Ann Arbor. There are over 20 miles of trails right from downtown. Very few cities can claim mountain biking and hiking trails that close to town with high quality and more than a mile long. It's possible to link together multiple trails and parks, but it's hard to navigate and there could be better connectors between parks. There's huge potential. Easy access to mountain bike trails played a large factor in purchasing a house on Ann Arbor's north side, and I am excited to help build more stuff, said an anonymous bike park survey respondent. We're here today because kids need places to play, as you well know and you advocate for every day. We have 163 or 4 now parks and many natural areas, and we are so grateful for those. But thousands of Ann Arbor's children like to play on their bikes. And kids and adults in Ann Arbor know what to do with a basketball and a hoop, and they know how to navigate school sport offerings, but they've expressed their desire for education, training, and coaching to help develop bicycling skills. And these quality developmental programming opportunities require reliable facilities where learners can practice and develop their skills safely and consistently. In the past decade, cycling has grown immensely. And in the last 2 years, cycling in Ann Arbor has escalated beyond its already rapid incline. Bike sales and service requests have been up significantly. All 11 Ann Arbor bike shops were either sold out, near sold out, or back ordered on bikes, parts, and supplies throughout the pandemic. Common Cycle and the Community Action Network donated hundreds of bicycles with locks and helmets to those in need. We are here today because quotes like this. Second Wave Media put out an article in May 2015 highlighting the developments at Stony Creek. And in that article, they said this: since he began working with the Michigan Department of Natural Resources in 2005, Ron Olson, the agency's chief of Parks and Rec, has watched mountain biking and its close cousin gravel road biking gain a lot of fans around the state. And he thinks COVID-19 only increased people's eagerness to hit the trails. Sales in front suspension mountain bikes rose more than 150% in April 2020 compared to the previous year, according to the NDP Group, a market research firm. But enthusiasm for the sport goes back a lot further, and mountain biking has really evolved and exploded in terms of interest in Michigan, Olson says. Lots of people are getting out and finding the outdoors with their bicycles. 264 citizens responded to the survey, which generated 22 pages of data, a lot of it written in responses, where people shared their voices. And we would love to do the best we can to represent their voices here. Where citizens ride locally, About 202 respondents said they rode at Vandamer Park, 129 at Olson, 97 at Bluffs, 84 at Cedar Bend, 66 at Tubingen, and you can see a long list of the arrays of parks and nature areas in town where cyclists ride and enjoy their time. How often do people use the Vandamer Bike Park? 90 people said in the survey that they use it once a month at least, 83 at least weekly, 26 at least yearly, and 6 daily. When asked about their frequency of use, respondents said, and I quote, these are all separate quotes from different respondents, "I would use it more if it was improved. I would ride more if it was in better condition. Would use it more often if they were upgraded. Would love more progression options. My ability and skill level exceeds the current availability. Larger, more consistent features would provide more incentive to visit. I would use it more if there were more and bigger options. I would ride it more if it was designed more for 29-inch mountain bikes, rock gardens, drops." And then others said, "It's always fun to go through the bike park. I stop every time I'm along the trail." Where citizens ride regionally and nationally, 220 of our respondents travel out of town to ride at bike parks, pump tracks, BMX tracks, and mountain bike trails, many in the UP, across the region, and the nation. Here's a long list of the places that people ride. People are traveling largely because they're not finding the features they're looking for here in town. When asked what features respondents look for when they travel, they answered in this order. You can see a giant graph, but largely people want some more jumps. And bike parks and pump tracks can help supply those reliably. The second most response was fun. People mentioning they want some place that's fun. They want some place that's safe. They want drops and progression and a wide array of other features. Citizen responses like this, survey respondents voiced a strong, wide desire for more safe, reliable, accessible, multi-skill level and progressive bike trails, bike parks, and recreation features. Imagine if Vandamer Bike Park and Tubingen Bike Park looked like this. Imagine if Vandamer and Tubingen Bike Park looked like this 3D rendering that James Yu created for us, with a children's area, a skills area, a trials area, and enhanced bike park features with longer, more sustainable features. Or imagine if Vandamer and Tubingen bike parks looked like this indoor bike park from North Carolina, where they invested not on the surface as much as they did in an overhang to provide 365 days of riding available. Citizen responses voiced a strong desire to meet Ann Arbor's longstanding need for citywide signage, mapping, and wayfinding. Some quotes are, "Map that Ann Arbor mountain bike trail and place signage so new riders can comfortably navigate the route. More people should be aware of this loop." In Ann Arbor specifically, there's no signage or guidance for the local loop currently. It would be made much safer and easier if signs were put in and the trails were reworked a little to better improve it. So we imagine if Ann Arbor's bike park signs looked like this. We imagine what they could be if they looked like this, or like this, where there's trailhead markers and trail signposts along the way, or like this, where you've got specific loop trails and maps for specific areas. Or like this, where the city of Valmont, Colorado had designed a whole citywide signage structure for their bike parks and trail system. Like Peter Sanderson called in and talked about earlier, they're doing for the county. It would be wonderful to collaborate with the county on this and approve those for the city. We are here today because Ann Arbor's Bike Recreation Advocacy Group seeks to collaborate with Ann Arbor Parks and Recreation to enact efficient, effective, and practical protocols to make repairs, achieve regular maintenance, and design and implement needed improvements in Ann Arbor's bike parks, trail networks, and undeveloped parklands. During the timeline that I created, I featured multiple times throughout the last 2 decades where people had tried to make certain advancements in parks, but just didn't know how to, or came up against kind of some of the city essentials and official protocols that really slowed down development. People didn't know where to go to. Still today, and even in the survey, people responded saying, "I just found out about the bike park. I've been riding mountain bikes and traveling to go ride mountain bikes for years and didn't know it was here." So this summer in August, we worked on developing the city's bike recreation website, where we turned it from a one-page website with feature only the Vandamer Bike Park to a multi-page website that features at least a dozen of Ann Arbor's bicycle trails and bike parks features, making it far more inclusive, connected, and better advertised. And we'd like to see this increase even more. We're here because we're confident that with community support, Ann Arbor can provide safe, reliable places for kids to ride in undeveloped parklands and in existing bike areas. The more fun, reliable places Ann Arbor provides for kids to play on their bikes, the more incentive they have to ride. And the more they ride, the more comfortable they become, and the more they identify as cyclists. Comfortable, confident, and connected young cyclists today will become the bicycle commuters and recreational cyclists of Ann Arbor's future. And the more we cultivate cycling today, the more likely we are to achieve our 2030 sustainability goals, making a way for safe, healthy, sustainable world for our children. And Mitch and I can both speak from personal experience that when we got our first vehicles, they were largely so we could transport our bikes further rather than to get around. I got a tiny little pickup truck, the cheapest thing I could, and all it did was help me ride more. And when I moved to a city like Portland, Oregon, I found myself parking almost the entirety of the year and biking 14 miles and back to work and beyond because I grew up as a BMX rider, comfortable on a bike and happy to ride anywhere and everywhere. We're here today because Ann Arbor's Bike Recreation Group is qualified and eager to offer bike skills programming to cyclists of all ages, all the more as facilities become more reliable. Our first jump clinic this summer had 35 participants ages 6 to 60, and we would love to see that continue and expand and grow, and even get involved in Parks and Rec or the schools if possible. Here's a picture from our skills clinic. Here's another picture and another. Here's a group of young Ann Arbor cyclists and bike park volunteers. These kids, they're so great. It's hard for me to not cry because they're so cool. Ages 5, 6, and 8. These kids love biking. These kids live in my neighborhood. I live in a Section 8 neighborhood. And throughout the pandemic, Common Cycle and Community Action Network provided hundreds of bicycles to neighbors like mine, whose parents don't necessarily have the time or the background to educate them in cycling or to help them grow. And it's been a joy and a privilege to work on their bikes, teach them about building, teach them about bike parks, bring them down to the bike park and have them work in the dirt with shovels and ride their bikes and grow. They're very excited about tonight's proposal and the things that it might lead to. We're here because we want to collaborate in expanding access to cycling areas, stewardship, and skills development. Access for all ages, races, genders, and cultures from a wide range of abilities. As I just stated, cycling doesn't cost much when you get a bike. And it doesn't require entry fees. It doesn't require so much traveling. It doesn't require lots of expensive equipment and facilities usage. And the provision of public facilities can really make an equitable access for opportunity for kids. Here's a quote from our survey that I found really impactful. Growing up, I was privileged to watch a burgeoning community and witness cities and counties investing in skate parks and bike parks that were open to the public. Prior to that, I was also witness to the effects of not having designated spaces to practice, ride, skate, and the results of teens and young adults being subjected to fines, jail time, and the loss of property, resulting in seeking other ways to spend time, which were not always productive. Investing in a bike park helps the youth, families, and tourists being able to come together, have fun, and pursue activities that benefit health and happiness. We need this.
Okay, so what do we need? Where do we start? Thank you, Garrett. We have, after much deliberation, we feel that a pump track is an excellent place to start. And the big question and the unknown that I get a lot, because there's a lot of confusion, is what is a pump track? It's probably not what you're thinking. It's not a BMX track, and it's not the Vandamer bike park. A pump track, there are a couple of things that define what a pump track is. One thing, a pump track is a continuous loop. And the idea, the concept behind a pump track is that you don't need to pedal. And so how do you not pedal? Next slide, Garrett. There are, on a pump track, there are two main defining features. They have rollers. And so the rollers you can see are the things that are behind this gentleman on the bike. And so rollers, you can pump the rollers. You get light on the front, heavy on the back, and that's how you generate speed. And then next, berms. So you have a combination of rollers and berms. And so berms allow you to maintain your speed while changing direction. And that, in a nutshell, is what a pump track is. You'll see both the pump tracks and all three pump tracks you've seen pictures of are all asphalt. So go ahead, Garrett, to the asphalt one. And so asphalt pump tracks have been around for decades, but asphalt pump tracks are kind of a new thing, and they are taking off dramatically. Asphalt pump tracks are superior to dirt pump tracks because they eliminate maintenance, and they can be ridden not just on bicycles, but they can be ridden on anything with wheels. I've seen people ride them in the wintertime on snowboards. And so asphalt pump tracks, asphalt pump tracks, go back, Garrett, sorry. So, and the last benefit of having an asphalt pump track is you don't have an off season for the pump track. As long as the pump track is clear, you can ride it. So a big issue with off-road cycling in this area is that off-road cycling is very seasonal. Freeze-thaw cycles turn the trails to mush, and you can't ride them because it does all kinds of damage. And so you've got winter with everything frozen, snow, people riding specialized bicycles. And then you've got early spring and late fall where the trails are off limits. But an asphalt pump track doesn't have that restriction. And so next we're going to see a video. And so this is the opening day of a pump track in Europe. And you're going to see, I tried to choose a video that showed a broad variety of skill levels and devices used to navigate the pump track. They kind of focus in this video. Go ahead, you can start it, Garrett. This video kind of focuses on people that are more talented riders, but you'll get to see a little bit of everybody in there.
Should it load?
And it's spinning.
Just imagine those are wheels going over a pump track.
Yep. It's not playing at all.
Yeah, not sure why that is.
Okay,
There
so
we go.
Okay, great. So you're going to see kids on balance bikes. You're going to see people on skateboards. You're going to see people on mountain bikes. You're going to see people on scooters, mostly kids on scooters. You're going to see people on more specialized bicycles like BMX bikes and dirt jump bikes. You're going to see a lot of people pedaling. Inexperienced riders tend to pedal. So this would be considered kind of a busy day at a pump track. There's etiquette that goes into it, kind of like the skate park where people tend to take turns and wait, generally not this crowded. So the nice thing about pump tracks is pump tracks afford some progression. So like you see these people jumping, but you can't jump on a pump track until you figure out how to generate speed. And so it provides a level of safety because you have to become advanced enough to go fast enough to jump.
This gentleman here in the orange and blue is an Olympic athlete. BMX is one of the many now Olympic sports.
All right, awesome. Next slide, Garrett, please.
Trying.
Okay, so I really enjoy riding pump tracks. I travel to Ohio fairly frequently to do so. Ohio is doing a great job with their pump tracks. They've got them all across the state. I've counted 11 of them that are either already done or are well underway to being done. The closest one to us right now is in Rudolph, Ohio, and it's supposed to be the longest pump track in North America. It opened last October. Whereas in Michigan, we have a pump track in Hines Park, which is just outside Westland. It's a pretty small pump track. And then there's also one in Grand Rapids, but it's so tiny, it takes like 3 seconds to go around. It's just this tiny little loop. So Michigan's falling behind. And then that's for the rest of the country too. Like pump tracks are going in municipal pump tracks are going in all over the place. So what would be the ideal situation for us for a pump track regarding location? Is we want it to be accessible. Like this is our big thing. We want people to not have to get in their cars if they don't want to, or if they don't have access to cars. We want them to be able to access the track. So how does that happen? Near public transportation. We'd like it to be near neighborhoods so that families and kids can go to the track without having to get in their car. We'd love for it to be near existing trail networks, whether that be off-road trails like the Ann Arbor Local Loop, or even better, the Border to Border Trail, so that people can ride their bikes to the pump track safely. We'd like for it to be near low income or Section 8 housing. As Garrett mentioned, there's been a lot of bicycle donations right now to low income kids, and they have need for a place to ride. 20 to 30,000 square feet of land and sufficient parking. That's one of the restrictions, like the pump track in Rudolph right now. They're having trouble holding events there because they didn't accommodate enough parking for the events. So, all right, next slide. All right, so as Garrett mentioned already, programming is something that other communities have done successfully. And Garrett has started this with the Vandamer Bike Park. And with access to better facilities, there could be a lot more programming happening. The pump track in Rudolph, Ohio that I mentioned already, there's a nonprofit called The Right Direction, and they were sort of instrumental in getting that ball rolling for this pump track. And they provide sport activities to kids is sort of their focus, like more motocross, skateboards, bicycles, like that kind of stuff, as opposed to more traditional like basketball and soccer. But they offer monthly clinics for kids and for adults that are free, and we'd like to do the same thing. They also have been involved with Ohio has a pump track series where pump tracks across the state all are linked together, and they have a race at this pump track and a race at this pump track, and you can win the Ohio Pump Track Series, which we'd love to be part of that or have events similar to that. Next. So we did a petition back in June to see if there was interest in a pump track. This was a petition done largely on social media, local cycling pages on Facebook. And so we had 715 people that signed the petition saying that they would love to see a pump track in Ann Arbor. And then of those 715 people, there are 250 of them are Ann Arbor residents. And Colin, I was going to email that petition to you today. I just got home from work and didn't get to it yet. Next. So this is back to you, Garrett.
So this quote comes from the survey as well. This Vandamer Bike Park is a special place. Investing a little into the space and offering other features in other A2 parks would be a wonderful gift to the city. And another survey respondent said, more bike trails and pathways and small bike parks in several neighborhoods. Ann Arbor has some nice areas, but they're poorly connected and there's room for so much more. Every neighborhood park and school should have a small paved loop and a pump track to teach basic skills for on and off-road riding. Pump tracks are great for all ages and abilities.
So those are quotes. That's not necessarily, we're not looking for a pump track. We're not looking for pump tracks in every park. We're just.
But that's what somebody in the city was looking for and responded. Yeah. So we imagine if vacant Ann Arbor parkland looked like this. We want to say thank you to Adam Furcho, Erica Pratt, Colin Smith, Tina Stevens, Mike Hahn, Abby, Ryan, Josh, A2 Parks and Rec, Give 365, Adopt a Park, and the Parks Advisory Commission. We want to say thank you to a wide array of local collaborators, Ann Arbor Bike Parks, Huron Waterloo Pathways, Commons Cycle, Downtown Development Association, the Potawatomi Mountain Biking Association, Bike Alliance of Washtenaw, Washtenaw Biking and Walking Coalition, City Transportation Committee, Ann Arbor Velo Club, AABTS, Brian Butrico, Carl Loomis, Thomas Hosford, Chad Jeffrey, James Yu, Maria Chickering, the Ann Arbor Bike Summit, Mitch Bray, and all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. I'd love to open it up for comments or questions from PAC members. So Colin, do you have a point? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I can certainly just add kind of a couple of words from staff. We just appreciate all of the efforts over the last year in particular, but obviously a longer time frame than that for how the community is involved in the bike assets that we have and all of the enthusiasm to move them forward. You know, I think the pandemic has certainly highlighted how the parks are used more and more, and has kind of provided an opportunity for us to provide more staff resources to, I suppose, the biking community than perhaps we have in the past. It's an obvious need and something that we want to continue to work on. You know, I know that we are already kind of working on improvements when it comes to signage, when it comes to linking parks. This really ties in also with kind of the Visit Every Park program and just the notion that we have all these wonderful assets throughout the city. What can we do to encourage people to visit all of them or to visit a lot of them? And how do they get to one from the other? So all of these are goals that staff absolutely share. And just again, kind of the importance to volunteers and community engagement in these types of events and these kinds of initiatives is just absolutely crucial to their success. We have kind of a limited amount of staff, so we need the passion of the community to move things like this along, which we obviously have with this group. The other thing that I would mention, I guess, right now is just in regards to the pump track. If you have a chance to go to Hines Park, I would strongly suggest it. It's really fun to watch. I'll be honest, I think that kind of the pump track is absolutely cool. I think it looks great. It looks great fun. It's visually interesting when you watch the videos for how they're used in other locations. I think it's something that Ann Arbor would, it would really be something which would be jewel in the park's crown, so to speak. And I know that's kind of a long way down the road, but I do think that as things progress, what we have is we do have a very good idea for how to bring things like this to fruition. To me, it would seem very similar to kind of the skate park model that we use, where we had advocacy groups come and tell PAC, like, there's people in the community that have desires and needs that aren't being met by the park system presently. Like, how can we go about sharing those needs and eventually locating a spot to have the amenity, and then how to go from there. So it's a long road, but it's one which we have a roadmap for. And I would just suggest that we look to that to guide us as we move forward. And I think anything we can do to continue this conversation, if it's something that PAC would be interested in, like in terms of a subcommittee, to include a couple of PAC members and staff members that were on today presenting, just to continue these discussions to make sure that things don't stall, but that they progress. That's my little speech for right now.
Thanks, Colin. Ruth, you go ahead.
Me?
Yes, Ruth, go ahead.
Okay. Well, I have a couple of practical questions and then just kind of a theoretical question. So practical questions, like I look at the different levels of bicyclists, and I'll just lay it all out there and then let you respond. I look at the different levels of bicyclists, and I wonder how you, like, what do other places do to control traffic flow and make sure it's not too crowded, and particularly that it's not dangerous for younger kids? That's one question. I heard you talk about asphalt. I'm just going to put out there that, like, the asphalt in my neighborhood on the streets is in a lot of disrepair. And so if you could just talk about other places that have similar weather to us. So I don't think North Carolina is like a good example in that sense. You know, with significant freeze-thaw cycles, like, talk about the sort of repair. And then my last question is, like, if you have thoughts about where, like, I'm sure you've been discussing, that would be a great place for a park. I would just be curious what your thoughts are.
I can take
Mitch, would you like to start?
Yeah, I can take the first part, at least. Okay, so a lot of the pump tracks, especially the larger pump tracks that I have visited, they have sections for little kids. So kids on strider bikes, stuff like that. So they have the main section for the adults with the larger rollers and the larger berms, but then they also have a little section for the kids who are on strider bikes and stuff that they can start off on. It's not quite as big and it's more comfortable for them. Now I said that pump tracks are a continuous loop, but there is a defined place to start and stop a pump track. And so it's generally the place there's a walkway from the parking area and it takes you up to some sort of start hill. And so the start hill is kind of this where you access everything and then where you end. On a long pump track, 30 seconds on a pump track and you'll be getting black circles moving in and getting fuzzy, and I mean your heart rate is way up. And so most people only ride a loop at a time. So you ride one loop and then you go back to the start hill and you stop and you gather yourself back up because it's a very aerobic exercise. And so in doing so, that controls flow because people take turns and you give gaps. So while it is a continuous loop, most people, unless you're just in phenomenal condition, will just do one loop at a time, stop, get their breath back, wait for a spot, and then they go. And so then they are directional. And so there is some control in that regard.
Yeah, to illustrate what Mitch talked about, I'm going to screen share again. This is the Geordie Lund Bike Park in British Columbia. If you can see, let me see if I can, I guess I've got to move my own Zoom window out of the way. There's a separate advanced riding area and younger students riding area. And that is, like Mitch said, very common in many municipalities. An excellent example is in Rogers, Arkansas. That dog is so excited about bike parks. In Rogers, Arkansas, the Rail Yard Bike Park, we've included that in a document that I sent to Colin and Erica that we call Exemplary Bike Parks. And it's just a Google Doc with lots of links to videos of different bike parks. But the Rail Yard Bike Park in Arkansas is an excellent example. They have 4 different lines in their pump track for different skill levels, and that helps a ton. Another thing that helps a lot is signage, appropriate signage for standards and usage. Having adequate and thorough signage is really a big part of establishing a culture, and having staff who check in around and having volunteers like community liaisons like myself or Mitch to check in around when we can to help kind of create that culture. That really helps a lot. Additionally, I forgot to mention in our timeline that in 2014, when the Ann Arbor Skate Park opened, they also employed some excellent signage. They have 3 signs at each of their entrances, which help establish their culture similarly. And the first rule that they established to set that culture is bicycles are not allowed. So if any of you were wondering, why are these guys advocating for a pump track in Ann Arbor when we have this incredible skate park? Well, rule number 1 is bicycles are not allowed. But it is a culture, and we cyclists respect that culture. And in pump tracks, I believe that people respect the culture that we establish as well.
Yep. And then in regards to your question about maintenance, I say that they are low maintenance. Can you hear me? Okay. I say that they're low maintenance, but they're not maintenance free. There is an established building technique for them that avoids the freeze-thaw cycle. You build it like you build a road, where you've got a gravel base with the asphalt on top of it, and drainage is important to make sure that gravel base is not subject to freeze thaw. The road at your house receives a lot more heavy traffic than a pump track ever would, but they're built very similarly to roads. The Ann Arbor Skate Park, and their as a concession or as part of their whole process, like they have a maintenance fund. And so we're envisioning the pump track would have the same thing. It would have to establish a maintenance fund. But asphalt's entirely repairable. Like that's one of the great things about asphalt. It's not concrete or something like that has to be cut out and repoured. Asphalt is something that can be cut up and reheated and reground and put back down and manipulated, and it's pretty easy to repair.
And in our proposal, we've mentioned a series in our paper proposal, and we can provide them as well, a series of different contractors. There's a wide array of contractors, some of which work predominantly in Wisconsin or Vermont or Northern United States. Velo Solutions is based out of Europe and works in Northern Europe in very cold, high freeze-thaw cycle regions. And so, yeah, the prevalence of pump tracks in places like Wisconsin, Minnesota, Vermont, we're confident that it would be sustainable for Ann Arbor as well.
Jeff and Ann, I see your hands, but Colin, did you want to help respond to this question at all? Because I saw your hand. I see your hand too.
If I could just hop in quickly, yeah, I will on that.
Yeah.
For kind of the location, it's something that I would envision going about the same kind of process that we use to identify the skate park at Vets. I know that in kind of the presentation, there were certain stipulations for what would provide a good space for it in terms of acreage and parking and space. So I think ideally I would want kind of parks staff to work with the group to identify parks that could fit into that criteria and then bring all of those back as a package instead of saying at this moment, this could work, this could work. I think kind of the public process for that's important. So, and then just kind of the one thing on the skate park, as to why the bikes are not allowed, you're right, it is a culture thing in part, but one of the things that you mentioned on kind of the pump track is that it's the continuous loop. And so that's a very, very different use than a skate park, which is all angles from every angle, up, down, sideways. And I suppose the collision between a bike and a skateboarder is not something you want. So it's really driven by safety. But I mean, I think the continuous loop is a thing which is great about the pump track. And I love like the way in which it works for sure. So.
Jeff, do you want to go ahead? Jeff, do you have your hand raised? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, sorry, there was a big echo there. Well, thanks for bringing this to us and putting it together. I'd ride mountain bike and BMX too, and I'd love to see one of these. Sometimes I feel like I try and get the pump track vibe when I'm on some of the DTE loops out there, but that doesn't really exist, but I wish, and I just think it's awesome. I mean, when you started doing the presentation, I'll just throw it out there. My first thought was the perfect place for this is the unused ball field at the north end of Leslie Park, down there in that hollow, and just throwing it out there. It's a big empty space. This is something I could totally support. I guess I should get out to Hines Park and see their track. I've never been out there. Well, yeah, whatever we can do to keep this notion moving forward. I was disappointed to see that connectivity came way down on your list of what people were saying B2B connectivity, because we've really focused on a lot of that here in parks and in other parts of the city. But, I get it because it really kind of comes to the city in one sort of way right now. But as we make those connections up in, to Vandamer and the other places, that'll open up the north side and the city core more generally to that. And I think that's going to come no matter if people prioritize it or not. And so, I know it's like you don't want to ride all day and then go on the pump track and then ride home, right? I get it. So I really think this is a notion worth PAC supporting. And I rode the old Hosford track back when I used to work on North Main before we moved it. And if I could afford a Hosford trial frame, I'd probably get one. So whatever I can do to help this move forward, I will. I really appreciate that presentation.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thanks, Jeff.
Ann, do you want to go ahead?
I was just curious about how much, like the size of these things, like how much land is required, and if you've talked to any of the folks that got these tracks together, like in Ohio and elsewhere, how much time and how much they cost. And then my last thing is just have you seen any of their efforts to get groups of people who maybe a little reluctant to try one of these things, what kind of programming they've done in order to get teenage girls, middle-aged women, those kinds of groups out on these tracks.
Gary, you want to start? You've done a lot of interconnectivity with other.
Yeah, I've shared a document with Colin and with Erica, some of which is still not thorough because I had a baby this summer, and I started a dual master's program, and doing all this advocacy has been really wonderful. But with a 6-year-old and a newborn and whatever else. But nonetheless, I have interviewed municipalities across North America, from British Columbia, the Boise Bike Park in Idaho that was funded by Albertsons, the Rail Yard Bike Park in Rogers, Arkansas that was funded by Walmart, the Baker Creek Preserve Bike Park in Knoxville that was funded by Bell Helmets, and bike parks in, and mountain bike trail communities in the UP, across Colorado, Fresno, California, and across the United States. I've been working really hard with Mitch and with others to interview municipalities and find out, how did they make this so successful? How were they able to achieve this? And it usually starts with community volunteers, and it often starts with conflict with cyclists like myself or Thomas Hosford, who are building something the city doesn't want, or that's just not approved, or it doesn't go through the proper channels. So growing up doing this, I've built BMX jumps in 6 states throughout my life. I've raced nationally and internationally, and I've seen a lot of success. It usually starts with volunteer input, like we have a proposal, and then cities look at the site. If a site is drainage ready, then construction can begin immediately, and usually it takes less than a year. Often the largest part of the work goes into the erosion management and water runoff. If stormwater runoff is ready, like the Highfield Hayner was talking about, or other locations, then you're good to go. If it's not, then that could take a large part of resources and time. The great part is once that's done, the whole area has been water managed and can be developed for other type of park features as well. The Boise Bike Park took about 3 years to develop. The first 1.5 years of that was water management, but it was built on donated floodplain. So that's what happens with a lot of these, is people donate flood land and then they expect you to build a really nice asphalt pump track on top. But yeah, so for the full scale, about 3 years. For a shorter scale with a flood ready or erosion and drainage ready piece of land, it can take less than a year.
Yeah, and you asked about cost. We've talked to a variety of people. We're not looking for, like, Hines Park is kind of a checkbox almost, sort of. It's like, it's a small little pump track. The community's like, yes, we got a pump. Like, we're looking for something like what Ann Arbor has done with the skate park, where it's a regional destination. I mean, it is a premier location. Like this is something to be proud of. We want the same thing with the pump track. We don't want a checkbox. We want a premier pump track that people travel to come ride. And so those, like a nice pump track is going to start around $200,000, and then go up from there depending on level of complexity and size and things like that. And then I think we're getting all your questions. So the last question you had was about inclusivity, mostly about attracting people who aren't
should go to who I would say are maybe like they're intrigued by the idea, but a little bit reluctant, because frequently the folks that are out on these things are very, very good at what they do, and it's hard to figure out how to get started. I speak from experiences because I'm a pretty avid mountain biker, but I don't see a whole lot of women like me that are eager, will put themselves out there, basically.
Yeah. So from a pedagogical standpoint, women learn better in women's specific groups. And that has become a pretty significant target demographic for instruction now. There's all kinds of women's specific mountain bike clinics. My wife just went to one up in Boyne Highlands a couple months ago. And top secret information here, doesn't leave this room. The Trek Bicycles wants to bring, they have a national women's coaching clinic called the Dirt Series. And they've been out west, all the big places, all the big destinations. And Trek wants to bring the Dirt Series to DTE Energy Trail next year, which is like a huge validation that we're on the map. And so I would see pump track programming following a similar vein, where we can have women's clinics, so that women can get together and feel comfortable and not feel intimidated by dudes. Yeah.
Yeah, we had female participants at our clinic. Again, we had seniors participating at our clinic. We had young kids participating at our clinic. An array of ethnicities represented as well. And we would like to continue to expand and expand. And I think programming is the key. Offering programming, and like Mitch said, specific women-led jump clinics led by women cyclists, women-led pump track skills clinics led by women cyclists is something we would like a lot. Also, Michigan has an Olympic BMX athlete who was in the most recent Olympics, a Michigan native BMX racer. Fantastic. I think she may have won gold, not sure. But yeah, pretty cool. So we've talked about inviting her if we get the the Field of Dreams effect.
So in terms of next steps, I think what would be best is if we bring a resolution to this group at our December meeting to form a subcommittee. Hopefully one of you park commissioners might be interested in volunteering to be on that subcommittee, along with some staff and those from the interest group, so we can explore further how to move forward.
My friend just texted me and corrected me. She won silver. Sorry, to be official.
That's impressive. Are there any other last minute questions for Garrett or Mitch while we have them with us today? All right, well, thank you both for your extensive presentation, and your passion is clear for this project, and it's great to see so much community support for this. So we'll look forward to working more together in the future.
Thank you so much, Paige. Thank you, everybody. Hi, Patty. Goodbye, everyone. Thank you so much for your time. I'm going to go to class. I am at the university, and class started 5 minutes ago. Have a great night. Take care.
Thanks, everybody. Good night, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Carl.
Moving on to our next agenda item. We are going to receive an update on solar at the recreation facilities. So I'd like to invite Simi Barr, from the Energy Coordinator from the Office of Sustainability and Innovations.
Hi all. Thanks for
Hi, welcome.
Great, thank you. Thanks for having me. It looks like screen sharing is disabled for me at the moment.
I think Kristen can fix that.
Great. Well, while we get that sorted, my name's Simi Barr. I'm the Energy Coordinator in the Office of Sustainability and Innovations, and I've gotten the opportunity to work on with some of the park staff around the prospect of expanding our solar generation in the various Ann Arbor Parks facilities. So,
sorry. Screen sharing should be all set now. Perfect.
Very good. Yep. So hopefully we can see this.
Yes, we can see it. You're good.
Great. So this all began with the Municipal Solar Rfp that was put out last year, and that response period closed in March, where this RFP asked for respondents and vendors to come back with some preliminary designs on various city facilities. This was part of strategy 1 of A20, which calls for powering municipal operations with, powering our entire community with renewable energy, and specifically our municipal operations. So there were about 15 sites in that initial RFP. They were divided into sort of our larger sites and some of the smaller sites. And then even since we've worked with vendors and these departments, sort of modifying those sites, adding and subtracting sites here or there. Homeland Solar was the vendor that was selected for the various parks locations. Those include 3 pools, 2 ice rinks, 2 golf courses, the senior center, the farmers market, and then a firm called Enerlogics, which is a sort of a larger engineering and solar firm, is doing some of our larger sites, including the airport, City Hall, the Municipal Center, and the water treatment plant, wastewater treatment plant, and the Wheeler Center. Those sites that we have in the parks locations, these pools and ice rinks, they're large users of energy. They also happen to coincide some of the peaks when they're using a lot of energy in the summertime, or also when we'd be generating a lot with solar. So those large users like the ice rinks and the pools present really good opportunities potentially for some strong cost savings coming off those. So I've gone through these with Colin and various park staff, and we've iterated on the designs as well as the team from Homeland. And I just wanted to run through some of the designs we have at about 10 of the sites. We'll run through the designs quickly. You'll sort of see the direction we're going with and get a feel for what they look like. And then we'll have a discussion and address any questions that there might be. First, so also thanks to Homeland Solar, you'll see their logo at the top. I'm borrowing some of their slides, their design slides. So these are examples of carport structures. In iterating on some of these designs, carports have come up more and more. We have, limited space, as everyone knows, in the bounds of the city. So, we might not want to be using, the available ground space we have for things like solar arrays. Pump tracks sound a whole lot more fun than solar arrays. So maybe covering a pump track with a shade structure like this could be something in the future. But on the left, we have the carport structure in Carytown. On the right, there's an example from the Ford headquarters, 2 somewhat different styles. There are also a lot of carports at Michigan State University up in East Lansing. And so some good designs to look at as we consider these more and more. So like I was saying, not a lot of space. So carports and rooftop mounted structures are sort of preferable to ground mounts in a lot of these scenarios. And you'll see that's sort of the direction that these have been moving. So we'll start with Burns Senior Center. So there were 2 designs presented for it, one being a carport design like this, the aerial view on the north side of the parking lot, right near the baseball field at Burns Park. And a second design being actually rooftop mounted on the senior center itself. That design is more difficult just because of the tree shading that's already there at the park. We don't want to be cutting down trees for this sort of thing, but it's an example of the sort of considerations you have to make. A rooftop mounted system like this is usually significantly less expensive than carports. So if we go for more carports, it's going to drive up the cost of the project overall at these sites. Here's the Gallup canoe livery, one of the more straightforward sites. It's got a really pretty modest load for what it uses over the course of the year, and has this nice pergola that, if rebuilt, could have solar put on top of it. It can offset between 90 and 100% of the site's usage over the course of the year. At the farmers market, the solar that's currently installed at the farmers market is the black bar you can see on the topmost car shade structure. And it currently offsets about 30% of what's used at the farmers market. The panels are pretty old, lower efficiency. So you can see that it looks like quite a bit, but so those dark panels could cover about 30% of the load. And then these blue panels that are put on, that's the sort of proposed addition, that would cover really the remaining 70% of the load. So even though they look sort of comparable in size, you know, the higher efficiency of the panels would allow for that. Again, offsetting close to 100% of the load at those sites. Part of the interest in, you know, when doing these expansions, we can also think about the electrification of these sites. So A20, we think about powering our grid with clean and renewable energy, but then also switching to electrified appliances where possible, and vehicles. So as we're doing this sort of electrical work, you can also run the infrastructure to make it pretty easy to install EV charging if and when we want at these sites. So that's a consideration in all of these, and especially at a place like the farmers market that's right next to a parking lot. You know, it makes sense to at least run the circuitry at the same time as we're doing these EV as solar is being deployed. So that's a consideration as well. Also, you may have heard of the resilience hubs and the resilience aspect of A20 and our climate work. And part of that is having, you know, in the event of power outages, being able to, you know, power our infrastructure at our various resilience hubs. So we're also thinking about what parks locations make sense to serve as resilience hubs, and what it's going to take to outfit those with battery storage so that they can function as the resilience hub in the event of emergencies. We've been working with Susan Westhoff at Leslie Science Center, thinking about what different installations could look like at this site. It's a unique site because there are many meters at the site. There are 4 different electrical meters at the site for the various buildings around. The critter house and the office building are really the 2 larger users. So we talked about combining the loads of those 2 meters. That's the electrical load you see up at the top, and then doing a carport structure to that would offset about 100% of that. There aren't a lot of great locations at the Leslie Science Center for things like ground mounts or rooftop mounts. Historic buildings and the energy, the roof of the energy house is already covered in solar. So it leaves really just the carport option at a place like this. But a place where rooftop would work is Cobblestone Farm. So this is the maintenance or the parks barn at Leslie Park, and covering the roof of that building could offset about 100% of the load from the Cobblestone Farm. Another option for that site was a ground mount in front of the tennis courts. If any of these are chosen as, you know, a viable design, there's obviously then going to be community input and that sort of thing when we're talking about a ground mount at a parks location. But like I said, you know, it's not the ideal solution for a variety of reasons. And in this case, you know, though the space is generally unused, it's going to there's a significant need for trenching all the way back over to this barn that we just looked at, because the electrical meter and the service is at that barn. So wherever the solar, the panels are, you're still going to have to run all the way back. So you're going to lose some power when you do that. And then there's also the cost considerations of doing that, as well as the site disruption that would cause. Another option at a place like Cobblestone or Bureau right nearby is these carports. So when we have parking lots that are this big, it's definitely a consideration to have. You know, you can cover a relatively small portion of the lot and still offset 100% of that site usage. But like I said, there's the increased cost consideration of doing the carport, and also thinking about the state of the parking lot and the asphalt that's there. We just talked about freeze thaw cycles and that sort of thing. So when we're talking about building a carport on top of that, you've got to consider the state of that and whether or not repairs need to be made prior to that that work being done. The same goes for things like rooftop solution. If we're installing on a rooftop, it means making sure the structure is sound, and then also that the roof warranty will remain intact throughout the life of the system. Here is Fuller Park, a ground mount, the ground mount array that was initially considered. There's that space on the east side of the park that was relatively unused, where a ground mount array could go. The other option, as we've discussed, is a carport. So about the same amount of generation. There's a lot of space for additional carports if it were to be expanded, but there's that increased cost as well. Another pool, this time the indoor pool at Mac, is another interesting site because it's part park and part school. We're trying to understand exactly the city versus state permitting that goes along with this. But by covering this portion of the pool, you can offset about 50% of the overall usage. I mentioned the ice rinks at the beginning as really viable candidates for this. A sloped roof that's south facing with a lot of electricity consumed at these sites. So by covering the southern facing portion of the roof at Buer Park, we can offset about 55% of the load there. That's at Buer Park, that is a estimated over $10,000 in savings annually on energy costs at this site in particular. To increase that offset beyond 55%, you can do things like a ground mount or a carport as well. You can see the $1.57 a watt. That's about as low as we can get price-wise when we're thinking about systems like this. So it's a rooftop system, which is going to be cheaper than a ground mount or a carport. And it's also a site where we've got, some relative economy of scale because it's a big user like that. So something helpful to think about in these. This is an example of expanding that with a ground mount or with a carport as well to get to that sort of 100% offset. We've also got to think about DTE's constraints here. You can size up to a certain limit in DTE's distributed generation program, and then if you exceed that, the inflow outflow categories change. So as you can see, category 3 system, they sort of treat it differently when they're compensating us for the excess we'd be generating. That park looks very similar. Again, a good design, really feasible in terms of the structure, and then the payback of this, even though it's only 37% offset. That's because the site uses a lot of electricity and it costs a lot to run. So installing at these sites, like I said, can have five-figure paybacks annually, five-figure savings, I'm sorry. Another option, just like Pure, would be expanding this with the carports to get closer to 70% offset. Finally, we'll talk quickly about the golf courses. So each of the golf courses is a bit of a unique system because there are multiple consumers of electricity at each golf course. So starting at the clubhouse at Leslie Park, we thought about a few different options, including a rooftop mount or a ground mount in different areas. But in speaking with some of the decision makers over there, those just didn't work with sort of their conceptions of using this space. So carports seem pretty high in terms of viability at these sites. Even things potentially like building structures to cover the golf carts from the elements. So building structures over the golf carts. They're currently not electric, but having an electrified charging setup for when we are able to electrify those sites. The clubhouse at Leslie Park is a pretty small energy user, so you can offset about 100% just by with that size carport. Another user at that site is the maintenance barn. Not a huge user either. The barn presents a really good structure to put solar on top of. The roof needs to be replaced, I believe, and I think that may be in the capital improvement plan, but one of those considerations, before we make final decisions about these sites, there may be some sequencing and some need for resources to be put in to prepare the sites before solar can be done. So sequencing roof upgrades before the installation. Finally, at Leslie, there's a pump at each golf course for irrigation. So this is a very viable site. It's between, I can't name the exact holes that's between on the course, but we can offset 100% of the use of those pumps with just a pretty small ground array that can be that won't be visible from the holes and doesn't present a big target for golfers and that sort of thing. So a really viable option at that site. We'll just jump on. This is the Huron Hills pump house. Very similar ground mount that could cover the load there. This was moved from sort of the north side, which is much closer to the river and the pond that's right there, and would actually be in the floodplain. And then finally, a few options at the clubhouse. So covering the cart enclosure, like I mentioned, and then potentially also covering the maintenance shed, and or even doing a carport. So as you can see, there are lots of options here. I wanted to just go over them to give you an idea of what to be thinking about, what to look for. What I've showed you here, the totals to about $2 million in work. That's for the hardware and installation of the systems. It doesn't account for things like parking lot upgrades, roof replacements, and that sort of thing. There are a couple things that play into some uncertainty around the cost right now are increased costs of carports and trying to understand exactly where where those would be and the sort of custom engineering that comes with some of that design. And as we all know, there's really high market volatility right now, and the prices of everything are really high, and that cuts across this market as well, into solar panels and the structures that you use for mounting and that sort of thing. So there's a $7 million ask in the city budget, but that's contingent upon the American Rescue Plan funding and City Council's decision as to where to direct some of those resources. Obviously, 7 million is a lot bigger than 2, but I also mentioned that these are not the only sites, and there's another vendor working on some of the larger sites, and those larger sites cost a lot more even. So that's some of the sort of atmosphere around the budgeting of this, but we'll know more about how council wants to allocate those funds early next year, and based on what we find out from that, then it'll be time to start making some decisions. I've talked to Colin about how we prioritize these sites, where we'd want to implement these solutions, in what sequence, and then also thinking about directly purchasing versus versus PPAs, where we're purchasing, where we don't outright own the system, but we're buying the electricity at a cheaper price, which is leading to paybacks over time. Basically, the idea is, to implement some of these and then immediately start seeing cost savings as a result. So like I said, at the larger sites, we're estimating in the $10,000 to $15,000 annual savings at sites like the ice rinks. And I think cumulatively across all the sites I showed you, my estimate's a little under $100,000 annually in those cost savings. And the timeline, once we sort of have that direction, we have sites in mind, we've got sort of prioritized lists. So we plan to start implementing solutions at those high priority sites within this fiscal year, before the end of the fiscal year, so mid 2022. So this is, again, I'm Simi, and this is my contact information. I'm happy to always discuss this and many other sustainability topics with any of you, but I'm happy to hear and field any questions and or comments that people have. Thanks again.
Great, thank you. Does anyone have any questions or comments at this time? Colin, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I would only add just to what Simi has said about we are waiting to hear how the funding plays out. That will, of course, kind of inform the ability to do certain things at certain sites. I imagine this will come back to PAC to have that conversation. So I just kind of want to keep this in your minds. It's a huge project and one we've looked forward to for years in parks. So I think a question to ask, if there are limited funds, is it more important to try to completely cover the usage of a high use facility like the rinks and the pools, or is there maybe more value in spreading out the solar across facilities, both from kind of an educational aspect and equity? So, I mean, I think those are things that the commission will have to consider as this moves forward. So we just want to keep it in your mind, really.
Great, thank you. Any other thoughts? Okay, well, Simi, thanks so much for joining us today and presenting. It sounds like we'll be hearing from you again in the future.
Yeah, thank you all.
Thank you. Moving on to the reports section of our agenda. First up, a report from Colin.
I do have quite a few things today. I will try not to take too long as we're moving ahead with the meeting here. First of all, for the December meeting, we are on the calendar for the 21st, but I'm going to look into seeing if we're able to meet on the 14th. I will try to send a poll to people to see if that works a little bit better for calendars. I think it will. We need just to see the logistics of that with CTN and other city staff, but I'll be in touch with that soon. And kind of related to that, I know that City Council passed a resolution last night about commissions and boards and remote meetings. Starting in January, certain boards and commissions and City Council will return to meet in person. But the Park Advisory Commission is not on that list yet. So you will continue to meet remotely until otherwise informed, is my understanding of that. At some stage when things come back to City Hall for all boards and commissions, there will be more information on that. But for now, anyway, come January, you're still at home or at work, wherever you happen to take the meeting from.
Oh, Colin, could I just jump in on that for 1 second? Just so that people do know, just as a heads up, we will be requiring commissioners when they do come back, at least under our current policy starting in January, to just show proof of vaccination. So heads up about that.
Okay. Moving on to this one's exciting. We're going to be starting the pros plan soon. It'll be on the agenda for December, kind of an introduction to it. So the pros plan is the Parks and Recreation Open Space Plan, which is a part of the city master plan. And it is the time to update it. I'm excited because we have both Hillary and Adam are at work together. So have the two park planners will be starting to undertake that. It'll be something in the past that we certainly look to PAC for assistance on in terms of subcommittee work and review of surveys and having a look at certain parts of the pros plan as it moves forward. So we'll have more for that at the December meeting. Then just a really quick update on my replacement. I understand that a executive search firm was selected. The contract is being finalized. And the idea is that they're going to come to PAC to let you know about kind of what their process is. I'm hopeful that that happens in December, but that requires contracts being signed. So it is moving ahead, albeit there won't be a overlap with me at this stage. Another update about the ADA plan that came to PAC actually back in the summer, and we ended up actually going back to the Commission on Disabilities Issues with it for some feedback. And then some of the things that we heard was there was really an interest in expanding the scope of the study to include all the parks within the system. So that's something that staff looked out to the selected contractor and asked them for a quote for that, and actually came back a lot less than we thought. We'll be able to fit that within what we had allocated for the budget for this project originally, if we supplement it with a little bit of the Parks Fairness Resolution money that actually came to Parks as a result of the budget adoption. And that seems to be a pretty wise and equitable use of the Parks Fairness funds to move ahead something like an ADA transition plan. So the hope is to get that actually on the council agenda late December to actually be able to move that ahead. And again, there will be considerable opportunities for public engagement and input throughout the development of the transition plan. Then just had a couple of updates on the rec facilities. We opened up the rink for Beer Park on Saturday. So it's always exciting to get the ice down there. So they're going and things are going at bets. For the golf courses, Leslie Park actually closes on Sunday for the season, but Huron Hills will stay open as long as weather permits. There's an event at Leslie on Sunday called the Chili Open, and it has got 120 people signed up for it. We can't take any more people. So the golf courses are going to close on a high note after what has been an extremely busy year for them. And then just the last item that I wanted to touch base on is we closed the books on the budget for FY21. That's the period July 1, 2020 to June 30th of 2021. As you can imagine, revenue was lower than in the budget because of the pandemic restrictions. Expenses were correspondingly lower. So I wanted just to share the numbers with you briefly. So revenue was $4.7 million for the budget. It came in about $3.3 million. Expenses, $8.8 million in the budget and $7.5 million actual. So the kind of important thing to highlight is that the net cost to the general fund in the approved budget was a little under 4.1 million. And the net cost after the pandemic and kind of the decrease in expenses and revenue ended up being just over 4.2 million. So we were still within 3 or 4% of the actual net cost of the budget to the general fund. So that's really just a shout out to the staff that have to manage these budgets. There are certain things they really don't have a lot of latitude or any actual latitude with. So we're able to kind of intelligently restrict expenses. That was done. And last but not least, just on kind of the positive side for revenue, I would say that almost everything that we offered or were able to offer because of pandemic restrictions were either at capacity or very full. So as more things come back, I really think the numbers are going to look good. One place which did not have restrictions were the golf courses. And just to give an idea as to how busy they were, for them, the revenue that they had in the budget was 1.1 million. They ended up almost 1.6 million. So 40% above budget. And it's really not a stretch to say if the weather was halfway nice and they had a time, it was full. So, kudos to the hard work that they've done there. And I think as we move into next year, I hope, again, the restrictions release and we should be able to get back to revenue projections as they've been in the past. That's everything I got for the manager's update.
Great, thanks, Colin. Any questions for Colin regarding his report? All right. Let's move on to Patty. Is there any BRAC updates?
Nope, nothing to report this month.
Okay, great.
I have to jump off in a few minutes. There's actually a new Rec and Ed class starting, and I'm going to be on the Zoom and just get things going. So I'll be jumping off in a few minutes.
Okay, thanks for letting us know. Other relevant commissions, and I know you are a new appointee to the Environmental Commission. Is there any updates for us?
I attended the first meeting. I was mostly just a listener. I don't think there was anything really relevant to parks, though, necessarily to report.
Okay, great. Thank you. Steve, anything regarding Center of the City Task Force?
No, continue to watch this space. I think folks may have seen that there was some continued discussion in the community around activities, unsavory activities in Liberty Plaza and some of the effects there. The Center of the City group is focused maybe more on the library lot than on Liberty Plaza, but it is somehow part of those discussions. And so I guess we should continue to look at that. That's certainly top of mind for me and some of the other council members or committee members, I should say, for the Center of the City.
Okay, thanks for that. Moving on, we don't have any unfinished business. Under new business, tonight we do have one resolution. which is a resolution recommending City Council include the Gallup Park Vehicle Bridge replacement and Park Road and Trail renovation project for consideration in the award of ARP funding. So included in your packet was a memo and a resolution, and I hope everyone had time to review the details of that. To kind of give a quick summary, Ann Arbor is set to receive upwards of $23 million as part of the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021. An initial list of projects went to City Council on October 1st. Unfortunately, Parks was not included in that initial list of projects. So with some work from staff, we've come up with this memo and resolution that we'd like to submit to City Council to have the Gallup Park Vehicle Bridge considered as one of the projects that would receive this ARP funding. There's a few things that make it eligible. It is an infrastructure project. ARP requires that all funds would be spent before 2026. And this Gallup Vehicle Bridge project is already in the design phase. So it could go out to bid as early as 2022 and constructed or as early as 2023. And just given the nature of Gallup Park, I think it's something to have council consider, given that it's one of the most frequented parks and key to our park system in Ann Arbor. And if anyone's been over that vehicle bridge, you know, you can't access half of the park without using that bridge. So again, I hope, you've had a chance to look at the memo and resolution. I'd like to open it up for discussion. But first, Colin, do you have anything to add that I might have missed?
I don't think so. I think you covered everything. Well, I suppose the one thing that I would add is just to give some context as to the cost of the bridge replacement. I think the estimate is about $2.3 million. Each year, like the total capital budget from the Parks Millage for parks is right around $2 million. So if we were to be able to receive funding to do the work on this bridge, that would kind of release those funds, the $2 million, for numerous other infrastructure projects and needs across the city.
Great point. Rachel, I see your hand first.
Yes, thank you. First of all, thank you for submitting such thorough documentation. I truly enjoyed it. But I did have a couple of questions. And the first is, I guess, more of a request. I could use a reminder on how this project would be funded were it not for this opportunity.
Yeah, so I can speak to that a little bit. It would be kind of a combination of funds. There would be part that would come out of the budget for the parks millage, but this is a case of where, because of the size of the project, we would have to go to fund balance from the parks maintenance and capital improvements millage. And we carry fund balance for these types of situations, but the reality is this would eat up a very large amount of it. We are also considering and would certainly look for opportunities for grant funding. It just kind of so happens this actually doesn't fall particularly well into any of those buckets. That's something Hillary could kind of expand upon, but it would be primarily, it would really have to be budgeted primarily through the Parks Maintenance and Capital Improvements Fund and or general fund monies.
The context around grants made a lot of sense to me. I think from my work in that, it reminds me of when a nonprofit tries to get funding for overhead. It's just not, there isn't a field for that. So I understand that, but if I'm hearing you correctly, we do have the funding for it elsewhere, but it would be a substantial strain to kind of drain that account for this. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is absolutely accurate.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Sorry.
Steve?
Paige, can I go? I don't forgot how to raise my hand.
That's good.
It's
Yeah.
like poking buttons.
Of course.
Am I muted? Am I raising my hand?
You're good. Go right ahead.
Yeah, I guess I'm kind of puzzling over it because the memos, it seemed to indicate that we had, or the city had somehow $41 million worth of ideas already. And there was like $24 million of funding, and not all of the funding could be used for all of the ideas. And I didn't necessarily see the benefit of sending another, hog to the trough and say, hey, we've got another idea on how we could spend this money. And so if it's a matter of the parks trying to raise our hand and say, if there's money to be spent, some of it, and it should go to parks, this is how parks would spend it. I can maybe understand that and get behind it, but I just didn't. I guess maybe I need some more explanation to understand why we would raise our hand. Given what I saw in the memos, it didn't look like there was a need for us to find more things to spend money on.
Got it. Julie, I see your hand. Do you want to take this question?
Sure. Yeah, happy to. So the initial list that we got from staff was just a preliminary list of things that we could use the money for. And then from there, we're going into, it was never meant to be, even though it's more money than we could spend, right? It was never meant to be an exhaustive list. I think it was meant to give us an idea about different kinds of projects that we could spend money on, how much they would cost, if they were scalable. So, from my perspective, if we're looking at infrastructure, I'm hoping to use some of these ARPA funds for projects that are highly visible, touch a lot of people in the city. So this one, and Colin was not even the first person to talk to, with the interim city administrator, I had a conversation with him about it, where he said, we kind of missed putting this on the list. What do you think about it? And as an advisory body, now that we're moving into this public input phase, I thought it was perfectly appropriate to have this body advise council as part of that public input process, right? To say, we might advise you to think about this project. I look at some of the other infrastructure projects and they have actually much larger price tags, and I'm not, so I'm going to beat up on this one, but there's a Miller Bikeway that was proposed, right? For I think like 7.4. So, we might choose to say, instead, let's spend $5 million on active recreation projects, and one of them could be the Gallup Park Bridge instead. So, this was just a sort of some ideas from staff. I don't mean to belittle it. There was a lot of work that went into it, but at the same time, it was just a phase one, and there are a number of phases that we'll go through before we actually come to a determination about how the ARPA funds are spent. Does that help?
Yeah, that's very helpful.
I was talking for a long time, so stop talking.
Rachel.
I was wondering if someone could speak to how this conversation here might weave into that public engagement process. From what I understood in the memos, the idea is that city would engage with the public to get their input on how we should spend that funding. And I'm wondering, would this just be like a general kind of line item for infrastructure, or is it just a line item for parks, or would it be specific to this project? And how might our decision here impact or be impacted by that engagement?
Colin, I'll let you take this, but part of it would be for this specific project. So we'd be asking for the consideration of funds for this Gallup vehicle bridge project, not just for money to be put into parks in general. So it is specific to this infrastructure project. But Colin, do you want to take the rest of that?
I can try. Certainly, it would be specific for this project. That's correct. I know that there's kind of a plan to do community engagement and to share kind of the projects with, I believe, the broader community. Like how exactly that's going to work, I don't think has been figured out step by step yet, but perhaps Councilmember Grand has more information on that. But I could see it certainly being a presentation of all of the projects that are under consideration for these funds, and I suppose the pros and cons of each, and then feedback from the community.
There'll probably be, sort of a mix if we look at what the county did. I'm assuming there are going to be some surveys, but also town hall type things. And but I would definitely, if PAC supports this, recommend that if there's, then that communication to council, that a representative from PAC comes and speaks since it's on the agenda, at public comment reserve time, just to plant the seed. I think with many of these, if we look at what's, projects that have kind of taken hold in our community, we saw presentation today, right? There needs to be a lot of public buy-in and advocacy. So I see this as step one for having it be under consideration, but not.
And I'd speak to, I do think that kind of a resolution from PAC and the comments to council are important, and they have an impact perhaps on community evaluation of this project, if you will. I think that Paige kind of touched on this, but it is really not exaggeration to say that almost anyone that spent any extended period of time in Ann Arbor will visit Gallup Park and also use this bridge. It is a project that really will actually touch almost everybody.
Jeff, did you have a comment?
Yeah, just real quick. So the two phases that are mentioned in this for the 2.4 or whatever, it adds up to about 6.8 million for the total replacement. Are we just asking for part of that, or all 6.8, or just, the recommendation that we would ask for all of that 6.8 for the whole of the project? I wasn't sure I was reading it correctly.
So I think, and Hillary can correct me if I'm wrong here, but one of the ways to present kind of the project is the entire thing, and then also scalable.
All right. Yeah, that makes sense, because the entire thing's a big chunk. It's like a quarter of the total ARP
yes, exactly.
funding, right? So,
right.
Yep.
Okay. I wasn't sure if I was reading it right. Thank you.
You are. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything you want to add to that, Hillary? Or?
Yeah, I would just say that, there's two parts to it, phase one being the bridge and kind of the immediate approach work. And I will say, we could say bridge replacement, but it's not replacing the bridge in kind. There was a lot of community engagement done, and it would actually be expanding like the sidewalk portions, significantly expanding those to be shared use pathways, having advisory bike lanes on there. So it would be, a significant improvement over what's there currently. And then phase two was kind of looking at the whole area more holistically. So, the Park Road is in need of renovation. The border to border trail is undersized. And so we looked at, we're replacing this one key piece of infrastructure, but broader throughout the park, how could we tie it in to larger improvements? So that was kind of phase two. And we wanted to make sure that what we did at the bridge would make sense for, hopefully doing phase two down the line. Phase one, the bridge is the most immediate need, just because the bridge has reached the end of its useful life. But, phase two would hopefully be, to follow sometime soon, because those are also two other key pieces of park infrastructure as well. And I think, like Colin said, it's scalable, whether funds are able to be used for part of the bridge or the whole bridge. It could free up parks or funds for other park needs, or maybe the other part of this, phase two for this project as well.
Rachel, did you have something else to add?
I think I do, but it's not fully formed. I think I just want to admit some hesitancy to support this. And I feel bad admitting that, because I love this project and I do understand the importance of it. But when I think about the purpose of these funds and how much need there is in this community, need that I'm seeing touch me even, I wonder about the impact of this project versus other things. I understand that this is a wish list and that there's a lot of good that could be done. But I think for me, the part that makes it a little easier to come around to is what Hillary was speaking to, that it's scalable, if I'm understanding that term correctly. And I think what is a little bit more palatable to me, at least, is perhaps using a combination of funding opportunities to get this done. But that price tag, I'm struggling with it. I will admit that, just given the need, especially compared to, say, the line item to purchase what I read as 4+ housing units for a housing first approach. So I just think about people who need that. And then I think about how many people I know who come into this community from other communities and drive over that bridge to enjoy that beautiful playground. And I think they're both valid needs, but I just wanted to put that out in the open that I'm asking these questions because I'm trying to get my head around this, but I'm struggling a little bit.
Okay, thanks for sharing that. Ruth.
Yeah, so I guess I would say part of me resonates with what Rachel's saying in that, and full disclosure, my husband works in low-income housing development. So I guess the counterpart to that is that there, just like there are other funds for parks, there are other funds for housing as well. Maybe never enough, but I guess I see my role on the Parks Commission as to advocate for parks. And that's different maybe than if I say we're on city council, but I think of Gallup Park as kind of our crown jewel in that when I go there, I mean, I don't necessarily mean it's like got the best natural areas or something, but it is so heavily used. It is such a central place. It brings such a diversity of people into the parks, much more, I would say, than any other park I've seen. And the bridge itself is very much a linchpin because there is a back way to walk in, but there aren't like a lot of other ways to walk in. And if you come in off of, I guess it's Getty's, there's just a little bit of parking. And so to me, the fact that it is a linchpin and that I think that Gallup is so significant that I'm a yes.
Thank you for that. Colin.
Yeah, I would just add, I mean, I certainly understand there's kind of a lot of viewpoints and context on this. On I suppose the list of projects that kind of have been put forward so far, there are other projects which would fall under some type of active recreation. For example, the Miller Catherine kind of bike facility, other parts of the Vision Zero plan implementation. So if there is a desire on council's part to fund some portion of that council policy initiative directive, then I think the Gallup Bridge fits very well within that context. And I would argue rather strongly that, again, the Gallup Park, the level of use there and the availability of it for people to use for free is one of the great things that we can provide for park users. There's no question the level of usage of this would be immense. So if the only other projects I think that were proposed on the initial list, if all of them had to do with, for example, the kind of like affordable housing initiatives and things like that, then I would see that perhaps there's not a place for active recreation in parks or otherwise, if that's where kind of all the projects were. But because there's both, I really think it would be good for parks to be in the mix and have the question asked.
Julie.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on that, I think the intent is to fund a mix of sort of infrastructure and human services. Now, most human services is still coming out of the county and not the city. But if you think about what the funds are, and there are actually some, you could really go into the weeds with. We've had some great memos that are probably attached to some council packets about, what ARPA is eligible for. And if you look at the kind of infrastructure, I think there are going to be some other federal dollars coming in for things like roads. But, this to me really fits what we're looking for in an infrastructure project, just because it does touch so, it's so highly visible. And I think people in the community want to be able to see these dollars go to work for them, right? And this is something that so many people would be able to identify. Okay, so I, how council ultimately comes down in 111, and there are going to be a lot of factors that go into it, but I do think it's appropriate for this group to advocate for a parks project, and I think this is just a super one to advocate for.
If I could just piggyback on what Ruth and Julie both said, it's our jobs as parks commissioners to advocate for the parks projects. And that's not to say that any of these other items on this list are not worthy projects, but they do have their own advocacy groups and supporters and funding sources. So just want to keep that in mind, that a project like this that is highly visible in one of our most important parks, it's our job to think about how we can best support that. Rachel, I see your hand.
Yes, sorry, me again. I wanted to thank Ruth for her comment. It is something that I have thought about, that obviously I'm passionate about other issues, as most of us are, but that my role here is to be passionate about parks, and I am. But I think one of the things within this that I'm struggling with, and again, fully understanding the value of this project, is that many people have talked about that this is a high visibility, really popular park. I have been there myself during the vicious 11 a.m. playtime on that playground and seen the parking and the people and the diversity. But one of the things that I wanted to bring up as just something that I've been thinking of is, does this project meet those most in need from a parks perspective? I think that's one of the things that I'm struggling with, is, are there other parks that are nearer to greater need within this community that also need infrastructure and maybe isn't as highly visible? Or I don't know, because I don't have that data, but it's something that I'm considering. I think that Gala Park is wonderful and does get a lot of use and visibility, but I also think it gets a lot of resources. And I just wonder, across all the parks that we have, if there are others that maybe need attention. And if it just so happens that some of those parks may be placed next to areas of greater need.
Colin, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really, really good question. Like, we don't have the demographics exactly, but Gallup is a regional park that we kind of know anecdotally and from what people tell us that it is used kind of throughout the community. One of the things about this park, though, and this particular project, is it is a large capital project that is close to being shovel ready, that already has had community input on design. It's something that we can say, like, yes, we can encumber these funds and we can spend them. If there was a similar project at that same stage and scope and scale and size in the parks in an area of greater need, that is probably what we would bring forward. But there isn't at this stage, which would be comparable anyway. The important thing, though, is that if we were able to get the funding for this, it allows those other park funds to have a greater opportunity to be allocated to those areas of greater need. And those are parts of the parks that we've really been trying to focus on in the last kind of number of years, making sure that we kind of spread capital projects across wards and across areas. So it would really open up $2 million that we wouldn't have to spend then at this particular park, but could elsewhere.
Are there other points for discussion, or would anyone be interested in motioning to approve the resolution?
All right, my opinions have come full circle on it. I had doubts at the beginning that this is what we should do, but after all the discussion around it, I think I've come around. So I would move for approval of the motion as stated.
Thanks.
I'll second.
Second by Ruth. Okay. Great. Well, I think it's definitely been a valuable discussion. A lot of good points have been raised. So there's a motion to approve by Steve and a second by Ruth. Is there any further discussion? All in favor of the resolution? Sorry, let me get the title. The resolution recommending City Council include the Gallup Park Vehicle Bridge Replacement and Park Road and Trail Renovation Project for consideration in the award of ARP funding. Please raise your hand. Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Okay, resolution passes. Thank you. Thanks for great discussion on that. Moving along, and I do realize the time, but we do have land acquisition matters this evening. Colin, do we still have quorum for LAC? We do. Okay, great. So we need a motion to move into closed session. Motion by Anne. Seconded by Ruth. All in favor of moving into closed session to discuss land acquisition matters, please say aye.
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 All opposed? Okay, we will see you over on the LAC Zoom momentarily. our LAC meeting, I need a motion to resume open session. Motion by Ruth, seconded by Anne. All in favor of returning to open session? Aye. Thank you. Okay. Our second public comment period. Kristen, do we have any members of the public on the phone?
No callers.
Okay. Great. All right. Communications are included in your packet, so we stand adjourned. Thanks everyone for
Bye.
round. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.